What do buyers want, and what are they looking for you to do for them as a real estate agent? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to dive into buyer psychology. I'm Jason Wilson, and welcome to the Real Estate War Room, where we talk about strategies and tactics to be able to go ahead and work in this business to make a profit. If you're interested in content like this, give us the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We would love to hear a comment below if you agree, disagree, or you have a question that you'd like us to answer. Let's get into this. Okay, so buyer psychology is really just a study of people, right? Wanting to know why people do real estate. I say this all the time in referral networking circles. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I should get a cup of coffee and then go get into a real estate transaction. Only real estate investors and real estate professionals say that. People who do other things for a living don't do that like they would go for a cup of coffee. It's just not a thing. So if somebody's looking to buy a piece of real estate, there is a mitigating reason, or there's an underlying cause or a motivating factor. And finding that quote unquote motivation has everything to do with you serving them at a high level. Now, here's my warning. The information I'm going to share with you is not to be misused. We're not trying to talk about the psychology of how you manipulate somebody to doing what you want and making a transaction happen. However, we are trying to get you to understand what it is your buyer's saying so you can understand what they truly want and you can guide them to that result. So the first thing we have to understand is motivation. It's crucial. It's the first step. It's everything in real estate. If somebody's looking to buy a house, I always ask them if they own real estate to begin with. If they don't and they're renting, I might ask them, what has made you decide to take the journey down the road of home ownership? Now, the answer to the question may be because they want to build wealth. It may be a different reason, but the reality is it's a good decision to want to own real estate because it is one great way to build wealth. So you can find it easily if they didn't own. If they do own something, finding their reason for buying this next property, you're going to want to find out a few things. One, what has you looking now? Two, what are you looking for? So that's going to be the type of house that they're looking for and potentially the area that they're looking for it in. Number three, when do you need to be in that new house and why is that important to you? Those are going to be the major questions that you need answers to. The reason is you're going to be able to guide them better if you know the answers to those questions, because that motivation may be that an absolute, meaning they need to buy a house, they need to have it before the end of summer, and it needs to be in a specific school district because their kid needs to be in Bascom Elementary. If that's the thing, well, then we literally have a time frame that we must do this on. So there's an urgency that comes behind it. When you're getting into the specifics of what they can spend, what neighborhoods are around, those type of issues, what features are in a house, are really secondary to the fact that they need a home in this school district so they can get their kid in school before school starts. If that's an absolute, now you know, okay, we might need to be flexible on the type of house if we're restricted on price point. Meaning, if there's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath split level, and they really would prefer a 4-bedroom, 2,000 square foot ranch, but they've got to find it in this area and there isn't anything available in their price point, then the conversation with them for guidance is we need to go, okay, is it more important to wait and get the 4-bedroom ranch in the right area or to find it outside in a different area? Or is it more important to get them into the school district at that time? And it is not your job as a real estate agent to decide what that is. It is to ask the question because they might really want to be in the Bascom School District, but realistically, they are not happy living in a split level. So they'd rather take a ranch property and end up in Knox Elementary School District, even though it wasn't preferred. What was more important is they had a ranch house. Why? Well, it turns out in this particular hypothetical situation that they have elderly parents that come and visit often and then can't go up and down the stairs. So that is actually a bigger motivating factor than the school district. So those are things to balance. Conversely, it may be the other way, where the school district's absolute, they'll absolutely take a split level even though they don't want one. The statement that buyers are liars was born out of the fact that buyers say one thing and then oftentimes do another thing. But that doesn't mean they're liars. It just means there were other motivating factors that they weren't aware were more important. It is your job to help them discover what is most important to them so that when they make their decision, it's the right decision for them. You never want to force somebody into a house that's going to be a bad decision for them. And sometimes it is your job to talk them out of it. Now, there'll be people who disagree with me on this, and that's fine. But I've done so much repeat business. It's because I am not going to talk somebody into a house that they actually don't want. I might point out and say, hey, you said you wanted this, this, and this. This house does not provide that. Are you sure you want this? Now, if they say absolutely, I will do everything in my power to get that house for them. But the reality is, if they're like, no, I don't think so. Do you think I'm making a wrong decision? I'll be like, well, the option is to wait, right? So let's talk about the positives and the negatives of waiting, and then the positives and negatives of moving forward, and then come up with a reasonable solution. The other thing about buyer psychology has to do with the money aspect of it, right? So no matter if you're a highly analytical person or if you're somebody who is impulsive, when it comes down to spending $300, $400, up to several millions of dollars on a piece of real estate, it's likely the largest single dollar figure transaction you're going to do in your lifetime or among them. That being the case, people tend to become analytical, even if that's not their normal position in life. They're not normally that way. It will show up more in a real estate purchase transaction. With interest rates having gone from 3.25 to 7%, now buyer psychology dictates that there must be time for them to become used to that interest rate. Once the interest rates have become more common, historically speaking, we know that 7% is actually an average. It's not bad at all. We've been artificially low for so long, but we got used to it. So now the buyer psychology says this is a shock factor and it needs to take time to settle in. If those rates remain stable or start to climb, 6 and 7% start seeming better than 8, 9, and 10 in a market that's moving in a direction. Now, if they can afford to wait 5, 10 years for a cycle to come back around, then they might just want to stay put and not buy, and that is their decision. But it is your job to be able to talk them through the money aspect of it and say, if you're concerned about interest rate, then perhaps we should be payment focused. Payment focused and wealth growing focused might be a redirect that you can offer that would counteract buyer psychology. But in all cases, you always want to revisit motivation to make sure the motivation is still accurate and to make sure you're driving towards that motivation. And more often than not, when you do that, even if they're like, that's it, I'm not buying, these interest rates are so high. And I go, okay, I understand. So does that mean you want to rent something in the Bascom School District? No, I can't find anything to rent either. Okay, so then you're okay not getting your kid into the Bascom School District this year. No, we have to get them in. Okay, well, there is this one house that we're talking about, but the interest rates are 7.25%. Well, I just don't want to pay that. I said, I totally understand. So we kind of have to figure out what that looks like. We either need to go a different direction and find something you can rent to get you in the school district. We need to purchase, which means we're going to have to pay these interest rates or find an adjustable rate mortgage with a special program, or we're going to have to decide that Bascom can wait another year, right? So once you start distilling those down, they choose the path. Sometimes it's, you know what, we're going to wait another year. This can wait. And other times they're like, absolutely not. Let's get into this. Let's do it. And that is buyer psychology. Oftentimes agents call me and they're like, I got this buyer, I got this seller, and they don't know what's best for them. And they're arguing with me on everything. Then I would say, get down to the nitty gritty of what it is they think in their mind and their heart. Share the information with them, share that with them, your concerns, but let them make the decision. It's your job to inform them, not to decide for them. So I hope this has been helpful for you. And this is has been buyer psychology for real estate agents. Again, if you've watched this far, please consider subscribing. Give us a comment on what you think. Maybe even tell us the worst buyer story that you've had or a problem that you're having, and you can reach out to the number below and ask questions. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much.